Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this midday mystery virtual event. My name is Jamie Bullock, and I'm the translator of the novel we're looking at today, which is Sleepless. Now, as you may be able to see, I have the UK version here, and I know the cover's different in the US, but this is the only one I've got, so there we go. I'm very pleased to welcome with me today Romy Hausmann, who's the author of the book. Hi, Romy.
Hi, Jamie.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Now, for those of you in the States, and of course that's everyone else watching, we're here in the evening, so everything's a little bit later here. We're about sort of 7 or 8 hours after you. So we've had our dinner and we're getting into our sort of later evening drinks and whatever. But we'll try and stay as compass mentis as possible throughout this whole discussion. Romy, now a lot of people won't know you. They may have read your first book, but what I think would be quite interesting for those is to talk about what you did before you became a writer, because I know that you didn't start out as a novelist. You worked, you had another job before that, didn't you?
Yes, I was a TV journalist and I was doing a lot of, trash TV, actually. I was an editor at, programs like Wife Swap and such artistic stuff. So yeah, but now I'm a writer. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And tell us how you came to write your first novel, which was Dear Child, which came out, I know, in the
UK. That was not my first novel. Yeah. I was working at my TV production company, and that was quite a cool job for me because I love listening to people's stories. So that was always my dream job. But it was quite it was a very stressful job. And I became pregnant and I was at home with my newborn baby and I was extremely bored. So I started writing, and that was the start of it all.
Right. So if Dear Child wasn't your first novel, then you must have written several before, or some before that didn't get published. Is that the case?
They were published, actually, but they were incredible flops. They got sold like, I don't know, 23 copies in Germany. So that was the end of my career, actually. And but I wanted to write because once you get into that writing stuff, you just can't stop. So I wrote and I was one thing after the other, and I've written for, I don't know, like 10 years or so, and then I wrote Dear Child, and that
became a big hit.
Yeah, it was a huge success. Yeah, it is incredible.
Well done for carrying on, because I imagine a lot of writers after experiences like that would have just said, actually, I'll just give up now. I've had enough. I might as well do something else. But you obviously were so driven that you thought, there is a book that's going to do well in me. And did you have good support from agents, from other people that sort of helped you continue?
Well, first of all, I think writing is not like you have a choice. Yeah, it's more like you have to write because it's part of your life. It's your way to communicate and deal with the topics that are in your mind and that you have to deal with in a written form. So it was not really a choice. I just couldn't stop. So everybody was saying, go back to your TV production company and earn some money because your fridge is empty and your child needs new clothes and stuff. And I was like, I have to write it one day. I just know it because I think that all those things that we do from our heart and with all our love, one day they are going to pay out. So whatever you dream about, just do it. People do it.
Well, we're very glad you carried on, and obviously it was well worth it in the end. Now let's now talk about the book Sleepless. It's quite different from your first novel, isn't it? Dear Child was a great success, and was there a temptation to try and sort of replicate that for a second book, or what made you think, I'm going to try something a little bit different here?
I think you have to do everything differently than after you had, well, I mean, when you've had such a book like Dear Child, such a success, actually it's a very, yeah, it's quite an awful job to write another book, but you have to do it. And I think it would have been a problem to just try and copy Dear Child. You have to do something completely new, and this is what I tried with Sleepless.
I suppose I was thinking more, some crime writers, for example, remain successful by doing exactly the same thing, don't they? Because they set up in like a police procedural, they'll set up a detective and a police station, and then they'll go on doing a whole series.
But where's the fun then, Where's the fun?
It's different.
Yeah, you're not writing for the money or for the fame or for whatever. Writing is like you have to, or if you feel you are a writer, you're trying to experiment and you're trying to do new stuff, and this is not like just, okay, I'm a writer now and I want to earn money and I just do one copy after the other, and I'm writing Dear Child and I'm writing Dear Baby and I'm writing Dear Sister. This is absolutely not interesting for me, because I'm not doing this just for the money. I just want to deal with the topics that are in my mind, and yeah, and every book should be different from the one that I wrote before.
One of the main features, or one of the striking features about this book, is something you explored slightly in Dear Child, and that's telling it from different viewpoints. And that's something which is that's something you're very big on. How did you have an idea of all the different viewpoints before you started the book, or did the idea of the plot come first and then you explored the viewpoints afterwards?
Well, I'm actually not starting with the characters. I'm not starting with the plot at all. I'm starting with a much greater topic, which comes from, it's based on a topic from psychology or philosophy that interests me. It's quite a greater question, such as guilt, retribution, or that's the one bigger question. And when I have that question, the topic, then I'm starting to construct the plot, and then with the plot, the characters are coming.
And because you've got,
this is funny, isn't it? We just like that my super funny language skills. I'm very sorry, guys.
No, your English is so good.
It's not, you're such a liar, but I'm so
do not apologize.
I'm so happy
for your
that
English.
I have you for my support. So.
You don't have to apologize for your English at all. And when you're plotting, and when you're, given that you've got these different viewpoints, so different narrators throughout the book, and you switch times as well, so there are different sort of time periods in the book. How do you keep control over all this? Because potentially all that information could go absolutely haywire. Do you have a big board that you put things down on so you can cross-reference and check that everything adds up, or do you just leave it to chance?
Absolutely not. It's just me in my head. And, I forget about everything else. I forgot to take out the trash. I forgot to take on pants or get my hair combed and stuff. But when I'm in a story, it just weaves up, and I don't know how, but it works out in the end. There's a lot of traces and stuff, but it all works out. The price of that is that I'm terrible in my daily life with all my tasks that I actually should do. But I'm not a plotter, because I believe in, when I have good characters and a good plot, it all, or a good idea, everything comes and finds me, and I just have to type. This is my way of working.
And so how does it then work with the editorial process afterwards? So you go to your lector or lectorin afterwards and say, here's my book. And does the editor say, oh my goodness me?
No, because I'm quite a perfectionist. It doesn't sound like,
So you work through it again and again and again, do you?
Sometimes I spend, I don't know, like 3 hours for just a paragraph of such a size. And yeah, it's quite, when I say I'm finished, I am finished, and my lectorin doesn't have anything to do. It's like that, yeah.
So you're a perfectionist.
But it takes me like I don't know, a year or 1.5 years to finish. I'm very, very slow, but when I say I'm finished, I am finished.
Yeah. Well, that's very good. That's very good. There's no crime in being slow if you end up with something that's correct at the end and that's right and that works. Now, tell us about the influences behind Sleepless. What, apart from your grand narrative, your grand ideas, your philosophical, psychological ideas, what were the more direct influences behind, let's say, either the characters or the plot here?
It's always reality. I'm reading newspaper articles and I'm watching a lot of documentaries about true crime cases. And all you guys who have read Dear Child, you know that the true crime case of Natasha Kampusch was the influence on that one, on Dear Child. And yeah, I guess it's reality. It's true crime. And when you deal with true crime cases or real criminal cases, you just get your ideas and you do a lot of you just take a lot of real things and just make your own thing of it.
So do you sort of cut things out of newspapers? Do you record things on telly and just sort of have these so that you can refer to them later? Is that how that works?
Yeah. And I've just written a book on true crime cases, on real cases. Yeah, because I've just collected so many cases that I thought I could do a book about it.
And was that something that had already interested you as a subject before you even embarked on Dear Child? Has true crime been something you've always been?
Yes, I guess that comes from my past as a journalist, know, because when you're a journalist, you're just you're interested in everything that happens around you, and you're reading the newspapers and you're watching telly, and this all mixes up in your head, and there's always a story to tell.
Lovely. Tell us a bit more about tell us a bit more about the setting of the book now, because that for me, that was one of the most striking features, was actually that the place has where a lot of the action takes place out of Berlin, in the countryside. Tell me about your relationship with that area.
Do you know one thing? I have to tell you something. Part of the book is settled in Poland,
Yes,
because
I was going to ask you about that.
the main character, yes. Nadia,
yes.
Originally comes from Poland, where she lived with her mother, who was a very talented dancer and wanted to be a ballerina in Paris, but she ended up as a prostitute. And the funny thing is, because Nadia grew up in Poland and her mother was a prostitute, that my books are being translated in a lot of languages and are being published in a lot of countries. But this time Poland said no.
Really?
Because of the setting, because Nadia's mother was a prostitute. And my Polish publishing house said we can't do this. So that was quite funny. Nadia's childhood takes place in Poland, and she grows up there, and later something very terrible happens in her childhood, and when she's 15 years old, she is sent to jail. And after she is released, she is being taken to Germany, to Berlin, by a friend of the family, and there she's working as an assistant in a lawyer's company. What was the question, Jamie? Sorry.
I want to find out about the place where I want to find out about.
Yeah, we have Poland. We have Poland.
We've done Poland.
Yeah, a very rundown area, very rundown scenery and stuff. And we have Germany, of course, because you know that I am from Germany. We have Berlin this time,
Yes. And then outside of Berlin, in this lovely area where the grandmother's
the Spreewald. The Spreewald.
That's what we all want to
Anybody
know
know about the Spreewald? I guess you guys never heard of the Spreewald.
It just sounded, it sounded so lovely. I want you to hear me. I want to hear you talk more about
it's like a jungle, you know. It's really like a jungle.
So tell us how far it is from Berlin.
It's not that far. It's like half an hour stuff. Yeah, and it's like a jungle. You have the little not rivers. What's the word for like the canale?
Canals.
Yeah, and everything is. You have to go. You don't have streets. You just have those canals, and people don't go by car. They have their little boats. Even the postman comes and brings your mail with his little boat, and everything is like a jungle, and it's crazy, fascinating scenery.
And is this somewhere you've spent holidays?
Yes, yeah, actually, when I was a child, I was in the Spreewald. And can you say Spreewald?
You can say Spreewald.
Spreewald, yeah. And I've spent my holidays there when I was a child because you know I'm from Eastern Germany, and I loved it there because you have the woods, but it's not like a normal wood. It's really like the jungle, and you have those canals, and it's like it's quite a different world, and that stuck in my head for many years. And when I started writing this book, I was like, I have to go there and do my research. I do my research. I do journey. I do my research. Actually, I just wanted to be there back again.
It's also quite a timeless place, isn't it? I think you get this idea that it's quite old-fashioned, and because
old-fashioned, like a fairy tale. It's quite like a fairy tale.
And because there are no cars, you know, it's almost a kind of idyllic setting for what goes on. And we don't want, for those of you who haven't read the book, we don't want to spoil too much by giving away too much of the plot. So what I'm hoping is that Romy is referring sort of indirectly to things happening in the book rather than telling you everything that happens. But it's a really lovely area. Just at this point, I'm just going to break off to say, if anybody's got any questions for Romy or even for me, I can see there's already a few in the Q&A, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. Please ask them there, and then we'll come to them when we've finished chatting about the book. Romy, have you ever seen a French film called Les Diaboliques?
No. What is it about?
Then this is going nowhere. The reason why I ask is when I first read your book, when I first read Sleepless in German, which would have been about 3 and a bit years ago now, that was, it reminded me in some ways of this book. And it's about a man and 2 women, and all sorts of things go on between the man and 2 women, and it's a great film. Do try and see it at some point. I think it was made in the 60s or 70s. It may even be black and white, but it was that similar kind of atmosphere. You don't quite know what's going on, you know, because you don't quite know who's in league with who. And that seemed, and I was quite interested. Well, if you haven't seen it, obviously it wasn't an influence for you whatsoever, but it's a really chilling, sort of slightly frightening film. Just these 3 people in it. So anyway, that question goes nowhere. So you haven't seen it, so it doesn't matter.
But I'm interested because you say it's an old film. Because you know we have a lot of references of old films.
Absolutely, old films. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And that tell us a bit more about the character Nellie then, because she's a sort of she appears as a sort of she's not a main character, and she has her own little story in the book, doesn't she?
She has her own little story, yes, but actually the story that's starting with Nellie is quite like a what's the word for Staffellauf?
Like a series, an episode of a series.
Yeah. Actually, it's starting with Nellie and it ends with Nellie, but you don't go through the story with Nellie because Nellie gets in contact with someone else, and that someone else gets in contact with someone else, and that one, and it goes like this and like this and like this. And this was quite fun to write. Nellie as a character is she works as what, Jamie?
Does she not work in the hotel where her? Or
it's not really a hotel. It's like yeah, a very small hotel.
Like
What's
a guest, like a guest. We
like
used to
like
call
a
it
guest
in the
house?
UK a guest house. I'm not sure what you call it
Yeah.
in the States, but anyway, it's a guest house. Yeah.
Yeah, and she dreams of she loves the old films. She loves the old Hitchcock films because when she was a child, she watched those movies with her grandpa, who she loved very much. Yeah, after he dies, she is just like, yeah, she's going on watching those movies, and she's like in a dream. She wants to be like one of those characters in the old movies, and she's starting an affair with a married man, and everything that, yeah, she tries to be like Ava Gardner and all those
Yeah.
old Hollywood ladies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so I've just seen someone's written in the chat, what is the name of that movie? Well, it's French and it's called Les Diaboliques. I shall try to, if I can type it, I'll type it in French, because I used to speak French many, many years ago, but it's been a long while now, I'm afraid. There we go, Les Diaboliques. And are you a what we would call a film buff yourself? Do you love watching old movies?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is I watch with my grandpa, so this is what Nelly comes from, you know. I used to watch the old movies with my grandpa, so this is quite like a memory from my childhood.
And I mean, you may have been too young at that stage, but did you watch crime films, thriller films, or was it slightly more innocent stuff with your grandfather that you watched?
No, it was Hitchcock, my friend. It
Really?
was
Okay,
Hitchcock. Yeah.
I used to watch, my dad was a big film buff too, and he was an actor as well. And we used to sit up late at night when I was young and watch endless horror films, sort of double bills of
Horror
horror
films.
films.
Okay.
I watched the old 1930s, 1940s horror films. It was absolutely fantastic. So I had that kind of similar background where you sort of really had an appreciation for old cinema. And I think it sort of sticks with you, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. What was it like for you to translate the Sleepless after, because you translated Dear Child as
Dear
well,
Child,
and
well, it was a very
you're translating everything that I do.
it was a very big experience.
I'm getting a lot of messages on Instagram and social media stuff, Facebook and everything, and they all go like, it's a wonderful book, it's a wonderful translation. It wasn't my job, it's not my merit, it was Jamie Bullock.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. Very nice to hear that. It was a very different experience from translating the first one, which
Yeah.
A Dear Child was much more straightforward in so many ways. And I think Sleepless, it's got different registers. So all the different points of view are very, very distinct voices. I mean, you had that a little bit in Dear Child, but even more so. And you've taken, I think, the literary level up one or two in Sleepless as well. So therefore, stylistically, it's more complex. And
yeah, it's a lot more complex. Yeah.
And therefore, when you're translating it, you can't just zip through it like sometimes you can do a thriller when you're translating, because you're just seeing an action scene and say, oh, I'll just do that. It's quite quick. There was a lot of consideration as to how to translate certain aspects of this book that you think, well, I've got to go back to that and back to that. And, you know, when it was being edited in the UK, then we were discussing lots of things. Now, how's the best way to replicate that for a UK audience? I know, I mean, when I translate, I'm translating specifically for a British audience. And then when these books get published in the US, quite frequently they're edited again, and certain things are Americanized simply to make it read easier for a different audience. But
okay, I didn't know that.
It does happen. It doesn't happen with every book, but it happens with quite a few books. It, you know, especially if it sounds a bit too British, it's sort of, you know, and it's sort of quite good. Just even if it's just a case of spelling, you know, or whatever, it's an easy thing to do to sort of make it read more easily for a different audience. Now, let's just very quickly, before we move on to the questions, Romy, tell us a bit more about what's happened since Sleepless, because I've just finished actually
yeah. I love it. This is my third thriller, Perfect Day.
Third thriller, which will be coming out in the UK next year. I'm not sure when it's coming out in the US, but this is, again, it's quite different. You know, it's quite a different book again, isn't it? you know.
Yeah, it is.
You said at the very beginning, one of the things you said at the very beginning is you like to do something different every single time. And you
Every
certainly
single time.
here, different characters, a different story again, but also a thriller and a real mystery. And that was great fun to work on. But you've also mentioned that you've been doing a true crime book. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, as I actually, you know, when okay, it's a long story, but I'm going to try and tell. Actually, for February this year, it was planned that I would go on a tour with two other quite in Germany, quite big authors. And we wanted to tour through Germany, do a big tour with big locations and stuff. And due to the COVID situation, we couldn't do that. So I knew I had like a whole month, all February, I had no job. I had nothing to do. And as I am a real true crime junkie, I'm listening to podcasts, I'm watching all the documentaries on Netflix and stuff. I was like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if I did like a podcast special, a true crime podcast special with some of my friends who are also crime authors or who are psychologists or who are policemen. And I could do a true crime podcast special with 6 episodes. And from that idea, it escalated quickly, actually, because now it's going to be a podcast and a book. And I actually didn't want to do the book because I just wanted to do the podcast as my 4 weeks project in February. But then I started on writing that book, and I got in contact with, in touch with a mother from Australia who lost her daughter under mysterious circumstances. I have I have 10 true crime criminal cases that I write about. And one of those cases is the case of that girl who died under mysterious circumstances in Australia. And I started on writing with her mother every day. It was a ritual. And she told me a lot of things about her daughter and what it's like to not know what really happened. And this got very intense. And it's quite a special book because, you know, you have, it's like a documentary of 10 cases, but you also have the contact with the mother from Australia, and this is like a diary. And I'm just, it's like what's the word for Selbstversuch?
Self-attempt. What? What? Selbstversuch an.
Yeah, I've tried to find out what true crime really means.
Okay.
You know, I confronted myself with the case of the dead girl from Australia by talking to her mother, not only talking about all the things that happened, like she died like this, but what does it, how does it feel? What does grief mean? What does it mean to not know what really happened on a very emotional basis? And this got so intense, and I wrote a diary about it. And the book now is, the 10 cases and the diary. And this is what I did for the last 6 months. And I didn't leave the house. I was only here. I was just in that criminal stuff, and it just really blew my mind. Yeah.
It's interesting because it seems to be a genre which is becoming increasingly popular in the UK, certainly as far as what I can see on the television schedules. And I think also in books as well. So a lot of people seem to be very interested. Now, I think I'm going to move, Romy, to some of the questions that have been answered, that have been asked in the Q&A here. And the first one you're being asked is, what do you love most about the world of mystery and suspense and darkness?
You know, I'm very interested in all the stuff everything that motivates us. You know, I think that we as human beings, every one of us is capable of doing something really, really bad. It's not just black and white. We all live in our own special gray, and under certain circumstances, we can become monsters. And this is what interests me. The psychological aspects and what has to happen that someone who's actually a good person with a good heart can turn into evil.
Interesting. Yeah. Now, what are your favorite thriller books and authors?
Oh, that's quite.
Go on.
This is quite difficult because, you know, I'm from Germany and we have a lot of really good German thriller authors, crime authors, but I think you don't know them in the USA because not so many German authors are being translated, unfortunately.
How about the UK, US ones that you know and that you read?
I love Alice Feeney, for example. She's from the USA. I love her, and she gave me because for my true crime book, I asked all my fellow colleagues, why do we write about why do we make up evil in the fiction, while the real world is bursting with cruel stories, horrible stories. And I asked Alice Feeney, because I really love her, and I asked her, why do you do what you do? And I love Paula Hawkins, Gillian Flynn. Yeah.
And are any of those in particular, or are they German ones who've inspired you when it comes to writing your books, who've acted as inspiration, sort of direct inspiration for your thrillers?
No, actually not. I don't want to be inspired by anybody else because I want to do my own thing, you know?
Sure. Okay, fine. Now, the next question says, talks about coming back to the subject of true crime. Is it difficult to create fiction from what is a true story? You talked about your process of keeping cuttings and reading about crimes.
You know, the interesting thing is that actually, when you're making up fiction, sometimes reality is much stranger than fiction. So I think that nothing we could make up as authors could be as bizarre as reality is. So I think like fiction is quite a comfortable bed. You know, you have the distance. You're just making up a crime for fun. And as soon as you confrontate yourself with reality, you just find out, okay, actually, it's not funny.
Do you know the ending of your book before you start writing it?
Yeah, yes, I do. I know the beginning and I know the end, but I have no idea when I start, how do I get from the beginning to the end? Yeah.
And you know, a question from me then, sort of leading on from this, because I was just over the weekend I was at the Hay Literary Festival in the UK, and there were lots of authors talking about their books, and they always get asked about these sort of questions. But do you find that knowing the beginning and knowing the end, then your characters start to take on a life of their own as the book develops and could take you places you weren't expecting them to go?
Absolutely. I think that's a problem with plotting, you know. I think plotting is like a bus timetable, you know. When you're plotting too
Rigidly,
intensely,
yeah.
it's like you just blindfold yourself for the development of your characters. And if you have good characters, they're guiding you through the story. Absolutely.
That's very interesting. Another question here. Are all the crime cases you write about solved, or do you also write about unsolved cold cases in your true crime?
From the 10 cases that I've written about, 9 are solved. And yeah, we have the problem with the one that, with the Australian young woman. It's not really clear what happened to her.
Right.
It's very unsolved cases are so unsatisfying, you know, because all you can do is speculate, but speculation is not that good because you yeah, this is what I had to confront myself with also when I wrote the book, because you have an opinion, you have your own speculation, but you cannot write everything, because speculating also means that it could, it could betreffen, Jamie.
It could was betreffen.
Betreffen.
It could. I'm trying to think of it in context. It could. Can you give me a few more words together? It could.
Es könnte einen Unschuldigen betreffen.
Yeah. So it could affect someone who's innocent.
Yeah, absolutely. So speculating is quite dangerous. So I decided to concentrate on solved criminal cases.
Now back to your fiction, and this is a question you might not want to answer necessarily. Do you base your characters in the book on people you know? You can't answer this in case they're watching, can you?
Never thought about that, actually. I guess that people that you sometimes take some traits from people you know, or take some traits from yourself to create your characters, but it's not like, okay, this is 100% my mom or stuff. I don't do that. I just create a character that fits into that story and that can guide us through the story with the big conflict, but some traits, I take from people I know. Absolutely.
And moving on from that, another question from me. Do you keep a little notebook and sort of note things down that interest you, that you think I must use that in a novel at some point? Do you, you might notice something about an individual person and think that's a great little something that needs to be said.
I'm not using notebooks,
Your head keeps it all, does it?
Yeah.
You're very lucky, Romy. Very lucky.
No, I'm just concentrating on the important things. As I told you, I forget to take out the trash, so I have a lot of space in my head for all those stuff.
No, unfortunately, I always remember which day the trash is being taken out, so I always remember that. I forget everything else. That's my problem. Now, what's the hardest challenge you came up against writing this particular novel, or mysteries in general? Interesting question.
I think the challenge actually is to create something new with every new book. That's just it. Because you can make up any crime, and because for every crime there's a motive, and that's not the hardest part, but to write a story that feels completely different from the one you wrote before, to have other characters, and you are translating my stories, Jamie. You know that what's really important for me is that every character has its own or their own voices, and to come up with new voices and new perspectives. That's the challenge.
And this is from me now, sort of moving on from that a little bit, talking about challenges. Do you often find yourself throwing a lot of stuff away because you've written a scene and think, actually, nah, it's not working, I need to do it again? Is there a lot of that? You said you're a perfectionist.
Yeah. I think it's quite clear when you no, I don't have to throw anything away, because it's quite clear what has to happen next. If your character fits, if your character is, if you make up a character that is made for the big conflict, for the great subject, they lead you through the story, and you don't have to throw anything away. No.
So you're immersed totally in it sounds like the way that you write, if you forget to do everything else in the world, you're immersed so totally in your story that it does follow on naturally. You don't find yourself thinking, that was a wasted scene, that scene doesn't work, I need to kind of redo it. It's very interesting how different writers have completely different experiences in that respect. Right, now from somebody who asks any advice for inspiring mystery writers. Have you got?
Or just do it. Don't let just no. It's just as I told you before. I was unsuccessful for 10 years. So what? But I just kept on writing. Do it. Just do it. Don't buy books from other authors and have a look at how they do it. Just follow your own instinct and just do your own thing, and one day it's going to work out. Just write.
Good. 2 more questions, it seems. What was the hardest scene to write in Sleepless, and why?
You know, the problem is, all my friends from the US, the problem is that I wrote that book in 2019. What was the hardest scene? No, I'm sorry, I can't remember. No, I can't remember. I guess it was quite hard to write about Nadia's childhood because she didn't have a good childhood, and she suffered a lot, and she just wanted to love from her mother and wanted to be loved back. And this was quite hard, I think, because
yeah, go on.
Yeah, because I think every time you write about children, you know, this is quite something that touches you very deeply, especially when you're a mom. Like, I am a mother, you know, and every time I write about children and children's emotions, this is something that touches me. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, if I then pose the question to myself, what was the most difficult thing to translate? Well, I'm looking from a more technical point of view, and I think the hardest part were the letters, you know, the letters that don't get sent, because because there's so much in there that's suggested and not actually. You know, you have to sort of understand what's going on, and as a translator, the weird thing is you have to understand everything explicitly before you can recreate the nuance in your own language. So sometimes, I mean, not in this case, but sometimes with authors, I have to say, what do you really mean when you're saying that? And it might sound like a really banal question, because an author would normally reply, well, I'm trying to be, you know, I don't want to say it all too much. I want to just keep something back. But when you're translating, unless you know what was intended in the first place, sometimes it's really hard to create exactly that sort of same suspense. And of course, in the letters, we don't really know what's going on until it's much further in the book. So you're just having to second guess. And then I had to go back, once I'd done the whole book again, go back and look at the letters again, just to, you know, with all the knowledge you've had in everything else, it then enables you to help write.
I'm sorry, Jamie.
All right, don't worry. When we finally meet, you can buy me a beer, Romy. Don't worry. Look forward to that. And there's a final question now from a person saying, what are you reading now?
What am I reading now? I'm reading David Lagercrantz. Do you know David Lagercrantz?
I do. My wife publishes him in English.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So which book are you reading of his?
In Germany, it's Der Mann im Schatten.
Right. Oh, is that the one about? It's not the one about Alan Turing, is it? No.
It actually is the one that is going to come out in the UK.
Oh. So it's one of his new crime series.
Yeah.
Okay. I haven't read that yet, but interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I love him. I met him in Oslo, and he's such a nice man.
Yeah. So it's already out in Germany.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank everybody for listening. It's been a really enjoyable, what we had, sort of 45 minutes, 50 minutes. All it remains me to do is to say, if you haven't bought Sleepless, please do so. You can get it either at barnesandnoble.com online or at your local Barnes & Noble bookstore. And I hope we managed to do this event again for Perfect Day, which I just showed you. This is the German cover when it comes out in next year, certainly next year in the UK, maybe next year in the US as well. And it's been lovely talking to you, Romy. This is the second time we've done an online event. And I really
Yeah,
hope
it was
we
so
get to
nice.
see each other in person properly. Now
Yeah,
that,
with the beer.
well, you know, now with the beer, exactly. Most important, now that COVID seems at least here to be on the wane, and I hope it is with all of you too, that we actually are getting our lives back to normal a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to say bye-bye from me. It's been really lovely. And Romy, bye-bye to you.
Bye bye. Thank you for watching, everyone.
Bye-bye.